All right, today we're joined by Brett Chaloner, who is an Army officer with 30 years of experience, including a broad range of domestic and international management and leadership roles. Brett, thank you very much for joining us today.
G'day, Marty. It's good to be with you.
Great. And hey, Brett and I met a few months ago now, and we actually connected on two fronts. Brett and I have a very personal connection. My father was actually in the Australian Defence Force for 23 years. So I was technically an Army child, raised and born, and very proud. And Brett served in the Australian Defence Force for 30 years as well. So we had that personal connection, and we shared a lot of stories of my father and also what Brett has done. But the other side we really connected as well, Brett, was the way that you looked at a mission. How do you actually take that mission and get the whole all the elements of a mission so detailed, and then all the teams aligned to that mission? And that's the part that I really enjoyed most, because what we're doing at stratapp is helping organizations around the world do exactly the same thing. And I think that's where you and I sort of had another connection, where we have continued conversations on numerous occasions around what you're doing and also what we're doing at stratapp. So thank you again, mate, for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Marty. And, I agree. It's funny. I think what made it more powerful was being able to connect on those two levels, because there was an instant understanding of each other in terms of that background and that experience. And so while it didn't necessarily have to be about speaking the same language, we very quickly ended up in the same place.
Yeah.
And I agree, the entrepreneurs sort of workshop that we met at was a real change of scenery for me. And it was probably in recent times one of the few occasions where I've been given the opportunity to apply maybe a lot of the thinking and the learning that I've generated or cultivated inside the military, and apply it in a different environment, and to some degree test the validity of it. And that discussion around mission and indeed purpose seemed to be a very, very peculiar and a very, very significant point at which we could find commonality and also help people immediately. And I know you're asking me earlier, what is the significance of a mission or a plan? And indeed, from a language point of view, you can apply different words. But what I've found is, if we're talking about mission or purpose, they're probably interchangeable. But in the military, there's a lot of language that's been developed that's transferred into the business world. And equally, there's business language that's transferred back in the military world. And I've often found that when they're going through that transfer, that there isn't necessarily the complete transfer of meaning and understanding. And therefore, in the civilian world, I've often encountered mission statements that are not, or they're confused with vision statements, or completely different ideas. And so, in terms of the importance of creating a clear mission or purpose, one of the best things about the military is everything is broken down into its simplest form. And it's amazing how simplicity cuts through chaos and uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're brand new in the army as a soldier or a young officer, or you're a general coming out the other end. We all still revert to those very simple structures, particularly when things are getting quite busy and complicated around us. And so at that workshop, what I tried to break down was the mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certain that it's as universally applicable in the business world, commercial world, as it is in the military world, because there's really just 5 parts to it. Now, the first part is who. And with that, it's like, well, who are you talking about? Who do you want to do something? And I'll give you an example in a second. The second part is what. And we often refer to that as the mission verb or the task verb. And it's a verb. It's what do you want to do? And you can, in the military, we have a nice glossary of our preferred task verbs, but you can really put anything in there. And then it doesn't matter about the sequence of these, but when or where. So when do you want to do this thing? And where does it need to occur? And then most importantly, right at the end, this is the 5th thing, why. And what we call it the in order to statement in the military. So who, what, when, where, why. That's really, it's amazing how much you can do if you just know those 5 things.
Yeah.
And so, just in thinking about this, if I apply this to stratapp, I might say, okay, who? Stratapp? What? Stratapp is to establish a planning support platform. When? No later than Christmas 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Where? Online. And why? In order to revolutionize planning and decision-making in business. So stratapp is to establish a planning support platform no later than Christmas 2020 online in order to revolutionize planning and decision-making in business. To me, that crystallizes the purpose of an organization.
Absolutely.
And you can make the words sharper. You can be more tactical, or you can look much lower in terms of your goals or your output, or you can have a strategic view, but you can still apply the same type of mission statement.
Yeah.
So that's how, that to me, every time, that is how we generate clarity in terms of planning and purpose.
Yep. Yep. And so, Brett, you've had exposure across not just the military, also through your connections and networks, also through to corporations as well. You made a reference there, which was interesting, around the convoluted story sometimes of clarifying a mission versus the values versus the goals and objectives that we go after. Give us an example of maybe some of the challenges you have seen of when they aren't clear, when they're not aligned, and
Sure.
you don't have the right tools and functions in place to execute on what we said we were going to execute.
At the lowest levels, so at the tactical levels, it's often been the easiest, I must say. And earlier on in my time in the military, I spent a time on the ground in East Timor, and then very shortly afterwards, I found myself in Iraq during the invasion, and then not long after that, going back and forth to Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And in those earlier years, the missions that I was involved in were all tactical in nature. Yep. Which means we're looking at small teams on the ground operating in a high threat environment where our mission or our task might be simply to observe the environment. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're looking for patterns of life, both of our adversary, yeah, or indeed of the locals. We might be trying to understand an environment or understand particular behaviours. And so in each of those cases, being clear on that mission was important. And it's amazing how sometimes you might spend 7 or 14 days sitting on the side of a hill looking through binoculars, and your one mission is to look at a 500 by 500 metre square piece of ground and watch what happens.
Right.
And now, as part of it, you might have had some tasks applied, and your commander might have told you, hey, this is the main effort. I want you to look at this as a priority effort, but here are some supporting efforts. So if the opportunity presents, have a look at these things. And so they complement my mission. Yeah. But again, it's all very tactical and it's very, very localized. But I found, even as a tactical guy, when I was involved in the invasion of Iraq, this is where mission statements weren't so clear. Right. We thought we were, and invasion can sometimes be a word that brings different thoughts to mind, and people have different opinions on it. But essentially, we thought we were going in there to liberate Iraq from a despot and a dictator, and to prevent weapons of mass destruction being proliferated around the world. Mm-hmm. Our mission was not clear, and as soon as we got on the ground, it became apparent that what was occurring around us was inconsistent with the mission we'd been given. Right. Yep. And so, rather than our mission being reset quickly to things like stabilisation and reconstruction, we stayed on the wrong mission for too long. And I hate to say it, but part of the product of that incorrect mission is what we're seeing today. Mm-hmm. Iraq is still a troubled place. Yeah. Afghanistan, they're still a troubled place because we mixed up things like mission and vision. Yeah. We entered an environment that was far too complex for us to understand at the time, and we didn't break it down simply enough, and we didn't listen to the signals of the environment. And in the commercial world, I guess that might be of the your customers, or of the economy or of any other number of other drivers that would tell you that it's time to change your mission.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, all through our life, through 30 years, hundreds, maybe thousands of different types of missions at the tactical level, right through to the strategic level where you're looking at things like the national interest. And maybe in some cases, it was just important for us to be there.
Yes. Yeah.
So the national mission was just be there.
Present. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, and this is the other problem, you know, the good and the bad side of militaries is they want to do things, and usually they want to do things for the right reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes when all you're supposed to do is just be there, when you start to do things after that, it makes the environment more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a very high impactful thought process that you put us through, because I think a lot of us won't resonate with the extremity of the scenarios you've been put in. If I could just sort of bring it down to the idea of understanding the clarity of the actual at a group level, and then understanding what your tactical function is and the importance of that tactical function to the mission, just brings clarity. Let's all go towards it together.
right.
What I've seen when that level of clarity is not given, everyone starts to make their own decisions, and they hope the decisions are in line with where we need to go. And that model is fraught with a lot of risk.
Yeah.
A lot of risk. And that's what we're actually trying to help organizations with globally, just move away from that, move away from the cloud of knowing the direction we're going as a group, make it real clear, and then making sure everyone understands their role and responsibility. So what you basically mentioned resonates a lot.
Yeah.
The extremity of it, obviously, we will never understand from that. So just a question I've got here, that around, I sort of, you've had some exposure to stratapp now.
I have, yes.
When I connected on the personal front, and also just the way our minds think around the vision, the mission, how everyone breaks down their responsibilities, and I love listening to you on that. And then you actually now seen stratapp, because you were very passionate about understanding it more, and it sort of went in with your mindset and how we can potentially help organizations as well. So when you think about stratapp, how do you think, what's the most value you think organizations and teams of organizations can get out of the stratapp platform?
Well, I'm going to say up front, Marty, that the thing that struck me was after all the years that I've had in the military, where we pride ourselves on that, clarity of purpose and the precision of our planning and the speed with which we can achieve it from tactical through to the strategic level. I have looked for a long time for a platform that brings all of those elements, all those tools together. Mm-hmm. And when I served on operations in a coalition environment, I've seen things that are approaching that, but it's a kind of a Frankenstein. And so when you started describing stratapp, and then when you showed it to me, and then when I got to play with it, it was almost like a come to Jesus moment, because finally I could see all of the tools that we would need for planning, mm-hmm. for decision making and for decision support in one place. And it didn't matter whether the plan that I was working on maybe had a multi-month, a multi-year, even a multi-decade timeline, or whether it was just going to be a day-to-day application. It was all right there. And so those are the things that really struck me as an achievement that I've not seen anywhere else. And believe me, we have been looking.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. I think I go back to when I got really passionate, and Ash Richardson, my business partner, is very passionate about tech, strategy, ex-Accenture, mindset. And I always went, where did my strategy brain come from? And it must have been growing up in the army. I saw it that way. It was very disciplined, but it was very clear on what the plan was. It was very clear on what the boundaries were. It was very clear on what you had to do. And that's the way I've actually been very beneficial to be able to raise my family with the same mindset. The fact that we're here 20, 30 years later and I've built strategy execution technology, well, I don't know. Maybe we go back to the same grassroots with that. So with that, Brett, I really appreciate you joining us today. I learn from you every single time we get together. And I do have a lot of fun talking to you, and I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship. many years to come.
Hey, thanks, Marty. And, mate, it's a real pleasure. And can I just finish off by saying, mate, it's the more you've made me think about it. First of all, the more I realise that every day when things get a little bit complicated, I have to sort of default back to what is my mission, and I can generate clarity. And if I could tie that to something like stratapp on a daily basis, I think the amount that we could achieve and also the precision with which we could achieve it would be significant. So, I'm excited about what is ahead for stratapp, and I'm excited about exposing it to other parts of particularly Australia, but also globally, because I think it's going to be a significant game changer. Thanks, mate.
Thanks very much, Brett.